All right, well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for Agile Austin Coaching Meetup on May the 1st. So we meet the first Monday of every month, and today just also happens to be Happy May Day, which is all about having fun. So just a little getting us more playful mood. So my name is Lonnie, and Sid and I co-host the Coaching Meetup. And we really focus on getting speakers from not just Agile coaching, but coaching in general, getting insights from some of our attendees, what we're hearing that may really help coaches, Agile coaches, and truly in any stage of their journey, whether they're starting out, you've been doing it, whether you're a speaker, there's always something to learn. And we're super glad that we've been able to get speakers from around the country and even around the world. And you want to move on to the next one, Sid? For those who are not familiar with Agile Austin, if this happens to be your first meetup, throw that in chat if it is your first time. We'd love to know. We do have some additional meetups. If you're interested, the best place to go is meetup.com/AgileAustin. And then you'll see like the events as they come up, should you be interested. And if you're not familiar with Agile Austin, so we're really a nonprofit that focuses on education, collaboration, really being a community. And like I said, focus on Austin, though we've been really had the great opportunity to have folks from around the world. And we do want to thank our sponsors. So I'm not going to go through them all, but they make it possible for us to have these meetups. And then if you're in Austin as well, we had our first in-person in quite a few years last week. And I think they definitely hope to have more of those. As for the coaching one, we'll probably everybody's still playing with hybrid, and that way we can keep our audience. But thanks to all our sponsors. And if you're interested in sponsoring, we're always looking for that. And then also if you're interested in being a member, and just heard last week, we do have members outside of Austin and around the world. Just a little fee for that, but that gives you access to, beyond this, an opportunity to be part of our Slack community, vote and sit on the board. And then there's also some other kind of special events and training discounts. And then just a quick view into our board members that really support us as the SIG leaders. Really thank them for bringing us a lot of the kind of infrastructure and things we need to be able to host events like this. Before we get into today's speaker, just want to at least give you a kind of preview for the next few months. So we're going to have in June, we're super excited to have a pair of coaches, Agile coaches, Nono and Dion, who are going to talk about moving that rock. So really, one thing that I hear about a lot is how to get your team to be accountable. Like we talk about empowerment, but how do you really do that? And I'm super excited to have them come in June. We will be taking July off, so that's why you don't see anything for July. We just have a lot of folks who go on vacation. So we'll skip July, but come back in August with Erin, who's going to talk to us about Agile coaching supervision. So it kind of goes, how do you continue to hone your skills as an Agile coach, as a coach in general? And she's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Lonnie. So I am so excited tonight. I get the chance to introduce to you Dana Pylayeva. She's an Agile coach that I first met as part of the New York City Scrum users group. We met in, I think, 2012 was the first time we met. And over that past 11 years, I've been continually inspired and impressed by the work that Dana has been doing. She has such an engaging personality, and she's such a dedicated approach to coaching that it's really, I'm always finding new insights there. by using business games like DevOps with Lego and chocolate and Fear in the Workplace, Dana helps unlock team potential and bring playfulness and collaboration to the heart of every organization that she coaches. As an ICF certified professional coach, a Scrum Alliance certified enterprise coach, an international speaker, and an author, Dana is an expert in helping teams to navigate the challenges of a modern workplace. So get ready to have some fun and learn from a true master of Agile coaching. Join me in welcoming Dana to the monthly Agile Austin coaching meetup.
Thank you so much, Sydney. That's a great introduction. I think that's the best one I've heard so far in any meetups I was speaking. So really appreciate the warm welcome. So I'm going to share my screen. And as I mentioned this to the organizers earlier, is that I'm prepared to pivot on the fly because I have something for you that potentially we could do in Mural. I also know that at this time of the day or night, not everyone comes with energy to play, and some people only have just a little bit of energy to listen. So we'll play it by ear. If you're ready to play, we'll play. I have space for that. And if you're ready to listen and maybe talk, but still want to be in the same room together, we'll do that. So we'll be able to adjust and accommodate the group's needs. Okay. So with that, I'm going to start with obviously sharing my screen. And you should be seeing, nope, that's not what you should be seeing. Let me try it again. So question for you, are you seeing my desktop or are you seeing the slides?
Just the desktop.
The desktop.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was afraid. So give me 1 second. How about now? I
Looks
think
great.
Time is a charm.
Yes, we're
It
seeing your
works.
sign.
All right, awesome. So sorry about that, but we're gonna jump right in. And this session, as you know from its title, it's going to be about bringing playful techniques into Agile coaching so that we can get unstuck and we can help the teams and the people we coach to get unstuck too. So with that, the first thing I want to bring in is the optionality of our personalities. So look at these suggested options for the version of you that's showing up here today. If you see something that resonates, put that in the chat. If you don't see anything that reflects the version that you're bringing into this session, there's a different name for it. Go ahead and put that name in the chat as well. So let's see who is here today, what energy you're bringing, what version of you is showing up. So go ahead and put it in the chat. Hopeful, inquisitive, curious, happy, confident, overwhelmed. Yeah, all of those are welcome. All of these versions are welcome. Overwhelmed, closest to tired. Yeah, I'm coming up as a playful version myself. There are different versions of me, but the one you've seen today is a little bit tired, but mostly playful. Okay. With that, I'm going to skip this. You've seen, you've heard the introduction, but one thing I want to mention that as of taking the sessions and training and the certification with the cooperative coaching, I actually started using this picture of me because it's a whole person. It's not just the headshot, it's the whole person. So I'm bringing my whole self to this session. And I want to start talking about playfulness, because to me, playfulness has a lot of value in any place, whether it's workplace or home, family. It brings a lot of different perspectives. It helps us shift from worries and anxiety to curiosity and passion, because it's kind of hard to be anxious when you play. It also creates this optionality, new connections, just like you've seen these different playful characters, and it brought the optionality of what version of me is coming up, and potentially establishing connections. Same way when you're approaching it with playfulness, these are things that are coming up in the team. Better relationships, for sure. Reduces stress. Oh, yes. And I love this one. It's actually helping us to exercise both our creative and analytical thinking at the same time. So how do you bring this in, and does it have a place in Agile coaching? So what you're seeing here right now is the Agile coaching growth rate. And there are actually a couple of people on this call who added a lot of thinking and iterating on this version of the coaching wheel. So I appreciate you all. And if you haven't seen this, then there's a link here on the bottom where you can go in and explore it deeply. And in this session, I'm going to focus on 3 slices of this coaching wheel where I think the playfulness has the most place. And with that, you would probably guess the first one. So guiding learning. That's where I'm sure you've seen playfulness used a lot. You probably used it yourself when you are teaching a workshop and you're trying to maybe convey a difficult idea or a novel idea in a way that it's easy to understand. Making something that's very nebulous and invisible visible through the playful approach, through simulation games, also making it safe for people to learn something new, to explore team dynamics, to explore maybe even team dysfunctions, because when they're learning about it in play, it's much easier for them to kind of disassociate from a difficult conversation, difficult topic, and debrief from the experience through the game. The other place where you probably use playfulness a lot is facilitation. So Scrum Master, Agile Coach, you've done it before. So facilitating difficult conversation, facilitating innovation games, even if you think about retrospectives, there is a lot of playfulness that we bring in retrospective. Why do we do that? Again, because we want to build connections, we want to create that safe space and maybe put the problem away from it being between people, but helping people to look at it together and solve it together. So what you see here, people actually talking about elephant in the room. They're playing the game that helps them dive deeper into what are some of the dysfunctions, some of the fears that you see in our current space, and how can we overcome that? And again, because it's a game, it becomes much easier for them to resolve those challenges. So teaching, learning, facilitation, that's all cool. What about the other slice, the slice that deals with professional coaching? And this is where there are more than one benefit of bringing playfulness in. So one is that, yes, you're making it easier for people to go deeper into exploring things that might be not obvious. You're also expanding your own coaching range, because you're coming in with the playfulness and you're becoming more approachable as the person that is easy to connect to. You also are able to bring things that are not otherwise available in your coaching. Like when you're bringing, and I'm going to call embodiment. I would say embodiment is when you are trying to come into a different energy, a different state of being, and you're trying to actually learn something through taking a specific stance with your body. So using that technique in the coaching, it's scary at the beginning if you've never tried it before, but once you bring something like that in, once you put your playful mindset, playful perspective to that, it becomes an enabling factor, expanding your range. What I want to introduce here is another side. And before I mention what it is, I'm going to invite you to play with me here. So first play. And with that, I'm also going to remind you all that you all have the right to pause. I'm going to be inviting you to do something, to play with me here. If you feel like, Dana, I don't know, that's very uncomfortable. You're asking me to do something. I don't want to do it. I'll just watch. That's totally cool. You can watch. It's not going to be as much fun if you're just watching, but if you're willing to join me in this activity, that'd be great. So this imaginary clock, this is how it's going to work. So if you're willing to play with me here, then I'm going to ask you to stand up and you tilt your laptop a little bit so you can actually see the face. And you're going to imagine that there is a huge clock on your ceiling. You're going to point the finger, stretch your arm and point the finger to the ceiling. And you're going to start moving the finger in the clockwise direction on that imaginary clock. And as you're moving that finger clockwise, you're going to start bringing your arm down without changing direction of the movement. So you keep bringing it down, yeah. And now you're going to look at your finger from the top and tell me which direction your finger is moving right now.
Counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise, thank you. What happened just now? What kind of magic is that? We did not change the movement of the hand. So what changed?
Perspective.
Perspective, thank you. That's what just happened right now. We changed the perspective without changing the move. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk about here in this session today. How can we bring playfulness in coaching individual, coaching the teams, so that we can help them change the perspective? Because a lot of times we find ourselves in a situation where we can't change the circumstances, we can't change the environment we're in, but what we can change, and that's where as a coach you can help the team see that, we can change perspective, okay? And thank you for everyone who tried it with me, and if you haven't, I invite you to go back and do it again when no one is watching, because this is actually a useful technique to bring even in your training, even in your coaching with the team, because it demonstrates very easily the difference in perspective while you're not changing anything in the actual move. Any comments or feedback on this one?
I just want to keep trying it to see if it's always right.
Yeah. It's always right. The only way you can mess it up if people start moving the hands this way, then they don't see what's happening, because you have to move. So this movement remains the same, and it's the vertical movement that you are asking them to do. So without changing this direction of the finger, you are changing the perspectives. Instead of looking from down up, you're looking from up down on the direction of your finger. But it always works.
Thank you.
Okay.
For the explanation.
Of course.
I just want to add in real quick. Sorry, I'm not on video at the moment. But in addition to being Agile coach and a leadership coach and all of that, I'm also a mediator and a conflict resolution consultant. I think this is an awesome exercise for people when I'm teaching, right, how to have healthy conflict and helping them understand that there are different perspectives. So really, really thankful and grateful that you shared this exercise. I'm going to incorporate that into that kind of training as well, and hopefully others on the call can incorporate that to help people understand that in conflict, a lot of times it's just a different perspective. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that feedback. And hey, my mission accomplished. I already, infused some playfulness. So Sydney, bye. I'm done for today. All right. So let's keep going because there is more. So this perspective. So one thing I wanted to show here is that before taking the coactive training, I was always thinking that as a coach, I need to work with the problem. When a person comes to me, I need to help them fix that problem, right? I need to either maybe help them break it down or maybe do something with the problem. So taking the training this collective changed my perspective on this. So I'm going to ask you, so what do you think when you're working with someone and the problem and the goal that they're bringing, where do you focus as a coach? And feel free to put it in chat or just shout it out. Thank you. It's interesting. Yes, you need to get clear on the goal, but you also are focused on coaching the person, because I'm gonna do this magical animation. Hope it works. Because as a coach, then you are in this situation and you're trying to focus on the problem. You're never going to help the person solve that problem in the future. You may be able to address it now, but you won't be able to really do anything about person's ability to solve the problem. And in collective, there is this great perspective where every person is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So they should be able to solve their own problems. They sometimes get stuck, and that's where we as coaches come in and we help them get unstuck. But really the focus is on growing that person, helping them transform, and so they become bigger than the problem. And that's where focus is on coaching the person so that they can be able to solve that problem in the future. The person who is the problem for the person, that might be as well, and we'll touch on that. And so here with the focus on the person and helping them transform, helping them unstuck, bringing the different perspective, it's another way how we can playfully help person see a way out from the stuck situation. And so 3 tools that I'm going to share, they're all going to play these perspectives, but they're going to play these perspectives in a very different way. So tool number 1 is coming from coactive coaching framework, and it's something that's called balance. The balance principle is one of the 3 main principles in coactive coaching. And the idea here is that as we are working with the person and we're trying to help them see a different perspective on the problem, we're going to try different glasses. We're going to see, are we able to see this better when we are putting on these glasses or putting that glasses? So it's that metaphor of trying on different glasses until you are able to see better how to solve the problem. And this is, I don't know if you've seen this model before, but many of you on this call are trained in either coactive or ORSC, so this might look familiar. But again, the idea here is that in this model, this balance is what we're going to be looking into. Simple, elegant, playful series of steps. And yes, there is a framework, there is a model and formula, but the biggest aspect of that formula is being playful, because it's how you navigate through this different perspective, is the kind of perspective that you bring. That's what's going to make a difference for someone who you're trying to coach. So follow the formula, but tweak it in the sense of bringing your own playfulness into selecting the perspective, helping people navigate it. Okay, thank you for muting. So I'm going to walk you through some of the steps, and usually when it starts, someone, I'm going to call it client, shares a situation with you where they feel stuck or they feel out of power, out of control. So they're coming to you with that situation of stuckness. And through working with them, you are actually deriving 2 things. You're separating that stuckness from the situation that they're trying to explore. And so you're turning that situation into a neutral topic. And the perspective that they're bringing initially, that's their stuck perspective. So that's the first step, that you're separating the 2. And as part of that balance formula, you start looking through different glasses on this specific neutral topic that they brought. And with every perspective, you're looking at what kind of energy is there, how do they feel in that perspective, what are thoughts that are coming out for them, and even you may be asking them to move and embody that specific perspective. So you're literally beginning to pull different perspectives and exploring each and every one of them and shifting from one perspective to another. Staying with that perspective for a little bit to help the person explore the energy of that perspective and then apply that specific perspective to a neutral topic that they came from. And then seeking insights from that perspective. And I know it sounds like very theoretical, but I'm going to give you a few examples from the people I worked with, some of the topics they brought, some of the perspective they used, and what were interesting perspective that it gave them. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you, so keeping the playfulness in mind, so what is a good perspective to explore? If someone is coming to you with a problem, what would be a good perspective that you'd explore with them? Again, feel free to put it in the chat or just shout it out.
Like if we find the solution for that problem, what are the opportunities come across to us?
Okay. So imagining that we already solved the problem. So the perspective that's already solved.
Right.
Okay. Think about playfulness. How can you be playful about picking perspective? Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. So can you look at your table and just pick a very random object of whatever is on the table, the first thing that catches your eyes? And just type it in chat, what is that? Pen, AirPods, mouse, salt shaker, silver pine cone, chopsticks, bottle vitamins. So these are all great perspectives. Okay, these are all great perspectives to bring in to start exploring. I'm just going to give you an example. Logan, is it possible for you to, can I pick on you because I love the bottle of vitamins? Can I pick on you to just play a little bit with that perspective? Okay, who would like, if out of people who put the name of the things on their table, is there anyone who would like to play with the perspective a little bit? And I promise it's going to be safe. You're not going to go into any problems. We're just going to explore what might be the energy of that perspective.
I'm happy to, Dawn.
Okay.
Is a mouse.
Dawn, it's a mouse. Okay, excellent. So let's play with that. So Dawn, when you look at the mouse, what do you think? What can you describe as what kind of maybe emotions or thoughts are coming up for you when you're looking at the mouse?
Well, it's I like colors, so it has pretty colors.
Okay.
And small, and it's kind of aerodynamic. It fits well on my hand, and
okay.
it makes choosing things easy.
Then you put it in your hands. How does it feel?
It feels sturdy, and it feels like it fits my hand nicely. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what emotions are coming up for you when you're putting your hand on that mouse?
Just feels good, I guess. Satisfied, happy with it.
Okay. Okay. So now obviously we don't have a problem, so we can't really explore the perspective on that problem. But the things that we can pick up from this description that Dawn gave, there was something about colors. There was something about how it fits nicely. It's comfortable. It makes you happy. And so thinking from these qualities perspective. So you can think about if we were working with the neutral topic that we derived from a perspective, then what knowledge can you bring through the specific mouse perspective? And I know it's a little bit difficult when you're doing it for the first time, especially when you don't have a specific neutral topic. But what I'm trying to show here is that with every object that's there, everyone is going to bring something different. Like Dawn picked up on colors on the mouse. Like mine has, it's black, so it's like there are no colors. So if I were to describe a mouse on my table, I would probably think about something different. And whatever is coming up for me, coach can bring those things and offer it as the lens to look through at the specific topic that we picked. Okay, so it's that randomness what's available to you. It doesn't have to be serious. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And from my experience, the more playful you make this activity, the more insights you're going to get with the person you're coaching. So good perspectives. Let me see that people offered a few things as well. There is a goal, there is so someone actually offered a perspective. So how is a child would have approached it? Yes, the child perspective is another good one. You would ask the question right away, but what you would explore at the beginning is to think about maybe there is a child in a family, or maybe think about yourself as a child, connect with that energy. So maybe even get up from the chair and pretend that you're playing. So it's getting the person to feel that different energy, different way of thinking, different way of engaging. And with that energy, then looking at the specific topic that they're bringing in as a neutral one.
A little higher up in the chat, Logan, in addition to offering the bottle of vitamins, which was very fun, they also offered, what would your cat tell you to do?
Yes, that's another great perspective. Thank you for catching that. Yes, yes, absolutely. What would a cat would do? Again, before asking what would they do, connecting that step of kind of making yourself feel like a cat. Maybe it's asking a client to stretch like a cat. I don't know. Maybe it's like putting the you know how they put the claws out and in when they're trying to like maybe do something. It's connecting with that movement, it's connecting with that energy, maybe even, I don't know, imagining how fluffy you are as a cat, I don't know. But being playful about really connecting with that so that you can ask, so what would you think about this as a cat? What would the cat do? So if you were a cat, what would you do? From that perspective, that's where it's not just abstract question, it's also a step of connecting with how does it feel to be that object or that animal or flower or whatever is that you think. So thank you, great suggestion. So can be a random object on the table, and it can be, it's interesting, some clients I've worked with, I have nothing on my table, it's clean. Okay, excellent. So let's connect with that cleanness. What's there for you? What makes it, what that clean means to you, how does it make you feel? So it's exploring whatever they're offering you, really. Another, I love the perspective of just look out of the window and see what's coming up for you there. What's the first object that you see? And one of the clients I worked with, she saw a flower. It was fall and it was already cold, but there was a rose that was blooming. And in spite of the cold weather, it was just blooming. And what was interesting about that perspective is that the topic that we were exploring was public speaking. And so the insight that came up from that perspective was that, well, I can just try doing the public speaking. I can just start submitting and I can start doing something, whether people are going to listen or not, whether I'm going to get accepted or not. Like the rose doesn't care if anyone is waiting for it to bloom, it just blooms. So it's that carelessness of blooming flower in spite of the darkness and cold weather and rain, that broader perspective, like, hey, I can just try. I don't have to wait for anyone's permission.
Dana, did you know in advance people would bring up cats and pens when you made your slide, because you have cat on. Also, Bob has his hand raised. I didn't know if he had something, he had a question or.
Just a quick question of how to sense how playful, just any wisdom or any words around, how to adjust your playfulness, Dana, depending on who you're coaching. You could be over playful or under playful. So is there any like sensing or tricks or keys that you use or you could advise?
That's a great question. I usually just go by my intuition, and that's something that as a coach, it's like constantly trusting yourself that something is like you're sensing that this person will accept it or not, but also being dancing in the moment, right? That's another thing that's coming up is coactive or ORSC. There is a lot about dancing. There's a lot about offering, and if it doesn't resonate, stepping back and then looking for something else. And a lot of times when you ask someone to think about perspective, what I can offer is think about a holiday or a tradition or maybe a country you travel to. So think about something. And so I'm offering them broad guardrails within which they're selecting. So I cannot tell them, okay, so go ahead and think about, let's see, this plays correctly. And now it doesn't. Okay, I'll have it later, but I cannot tell them, go ahead and think about Christmas, because maybe they don't celebrate Christmas. And so that perspective would totally don't resonate with them. But I can offer them, think about your favorite holiday, think about your favorite activity. Or one perspective that would define the level of playfulness that they're willing to engage.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Very simple trick I use a lot is a swivel chair, right? Because a lot of times we are on Zoom and we are facing this screen, and it's hard to think about different perspectives. So I ask them if they're sitting in a chair that swivels. I'm actually asking the client to just swivel on their chair and tell me the first thing that they see. And so I'm introducing movement, which kind of makes it a little bit more playful than just staring at the screen. And it also offers them that freedom of whatever their eyes pick. That's what we're going to use. Someone's phone is buzzing. And that's the one that I was trying to bring, the beer garden. So it actually, when I was doing certification for coactive coaching certification exam, one of my coaches who was, I was supposed to coach for certification, I brought him into beer garden. I mean, obviously we didn't go to beer garden, but we picked a tradition. And he picked Oktoberfest. And so I told him, okay, would you be willing to get up with me? And so let's go to beer garden, let's grab a beer. And so we were walking with him, like pretend walking, right? With the beer in our hands. And so we were exploring that perspective as we were on the food. And that's why embodiment comes in, because you're getting a person to actually feel how is it to be on that Oktoberfest. And it's like you're almost smelling the sausages and the beer and all that. And so it puts them into that playful mood and connects with perspective. And then you can now bring in that perspective. Let's look at your initial topic. So what's coming up for you now? Okay. All right. Let's see what else do I have here. Favorite place, books, flowers. Puppy has beautiful energy. So if people have pets in the house, connect with the pets. And again, you don't know which pets they have, but do you have any pets? Do you have any kids? Do you have anything that you would like to explore as a perspective? And so all these perspectives are great, one playful, one serious ones. They don't have to be all playful though. One perspective that I found very eye-opening is when you ask people to think about something that they're not allowing themselves to. And a few examples that I can bring in. So one, there was a client who was talking about bungee jumping. she always wanted to do it, but she never allowed herself to do it. And so we explored the bungee jumping perspective and how she would feel if she went to on bungee jumping. And again, bringing that perspective into the topic that we derived from the problem was super eye-opening. Any comments on what I shared? Any thoughts, questions?
Just a quick question. I'm playing back. I'm hearing that this is a way to get people to think about things from a different way by embodying being in a different headspace than the one they're already in when they come into your session. Yes.
Absolutely. Because they're coming in and they're stuck. They're feeling very unhealthy energy about the problem that they're in right now. What you're doing with this different perspective and asking them to connect with the emotion there, connect with the senses, connect with it's the beer garden, the leaves are crunching, and so you're almost getting them to sense that, to feel that, to experience it, so that you're getting them out of that stuck perspective. Okay, cool. But that's just part of the play. Another way to think about it is, I mentioned emotion, thoughts, body, spirit, and what's coming up for you. So think about it as you're coming into your closet, and there are a whole bunch of things there, right? So there might be some casual outfits, there might be some very professional, very very strict suits. I don't know what's there, but it's like you're trying on, every perspective is like your different outfit. You try a different outfit so you feel differently in different outfits. And that's what you are exploring with this perspective. How do I feel differently? What's coming up for me? What can I use when I'm dealing with this challenge that I'm dealing with?
Oh yeah, different outfits come with different walks, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah, that's why, like, for me, as much as I love working in a very casual environment, and I love when I'm doing it from home, when I go to the office, I have to be at this business casual. And that's like silly, but that's what works for me. So yes, putting on a different outfit gives you a different perspective, brings a different personality, brings that optionality, right? So that's where, again, you're playing this different perspectives, and think about as putting on new glasses, new outfit, whatever metaphor works for you. But that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to explore, how can I be different in looking at the problem that I'm facing. And so what happens next? As we explored all these different perspectives, we're actually going to take the client back into every one of them very briefly, starting with the original one. And it sounds something like, so we explored all these different perspectives, starting with the original one, where you felt stuck, sad, I don't know, depressed, whatever that feeling was that it was described. Then we moved into perspective of beer garden, and you felt excited, whatever other feelings were there. And then we went into, other perspectives. And so you're taking them briefly through all of them, because you're asking them to think about, based on this different energy that you felt, different insights that you got from all this different perspective, what is the choice you want to make? How do you want to see this topic differently based on what we explored? Most of the time, they're going to pick a new perspective. Sometimes they'll go back to, no, I'm going to stick with my original one. And that's okay, because they explored things differently. Now, as a coach, you'll still ask them, so what's new coming out for you? Even though you're sticking with your original one, what are some of the new insights that you can bring in? But definitely getting them to, now they're choosing that perspective. Even if it's the original one, it's their choice. And then the final strategies, final steps in these formulas are thinking about proactive strategy, which ironically, if you know and heard and said many times about being agile versus doing agile, guess where it's coming from? So Lisa Atkins was the first one who brought in elements of proactive coaching into agile space. And this proactive, that's what it means core means being and active means doing. So proactive strategy is all about how you're going to be different based on what you learn in this exploration, and what they're going to do differently. Okay, what they're going to be, how you're going to be different, and what you're going to do differently. And after that, you're also asking them to make commitment. And this is where they're committing to, again, you're not forcing anything, you're just offering them what commitment would you like to make? What are you going to say yes to, and what you're going to say no to, based on what we just explored. There's that new perspective, there's the choice that you're making. It's all about their choice. You're not forcing anything, but you're playfully guiding them towards making a commitment to do something differently and be different in that problem that they came with, so that they're able to solve it. And then action. Yep, you just closing up with the commitment and specific action that they're taking, and then maybe some accountability. But basically, the last step is not as playful as the one in between. But that's where the most insights are coming from this exploration. Any thoughts, comments, feedback on the balance formula? Who worked with balance formula before? No? Okay.
It does remind me of other coaching arcs. I've not used this one, but yeah, it's definitely part of the coaching arc that I've seen before, but different. Very useful.
Yeah, definitely try that exploration, because to me, it's like the most playful out of all the coaching techniques that I experienced, and it makes my heart warm every time, because you never know. It's like you're co-creating something with a client. You're writing this play where you offering something and they're coming up with something, and it's that continuous back and forth dance where you have no idea what they're going to come up with. You don't even know which perspective they're going to pick. And so that story that you create together, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm going to share one more perspective before we move on. Someone was saying something.
Yeah, Dina, I was just going to say the one word that always comes up to me when I think about things like this, where you're bringing new perspectives, is curiosity. Because as a coach, like, you have to be, because like you described, you don't know what's going to come up. And so you can't come in thinking, okay, I'm going to help them solve this problem in this way. Because they could come up with something totally different during their little playful exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point, is that you really don't know what they're going to come up with, and you need to be comfortable with not knowing. And I think that's where this connects so well with working in the Agile space, and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? This being open to possibilities, to whatever is coming up. It's okay. We'll play with it and adjust to it and figure things out together, and really being open to that exploration.
And we do have a hand raised as well. Noah, if you wanted to jump on.
Hi. Yeah, I think I'm just adding to what just Lenny said, like, how would you coach? Like, so there are two extremes to it. One is the type of people who do not have a strong sense of imagination. Like, I think if you want to use a metaphor like a cat or a puppet or a kid, like, I think you need to actually let them take that journey. So how you actually coach those people who struggle with a strong sense of imagination. And the other extreme, I think what Lenny was saying, was the people who have a very strong sense of imagination. If they go on their exploration path, how would you bring them back? Like, because one thought would lead to the next and to the next and to the next, and they, like, how would you bring them back to the core problem? Like, I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to take both questions. So one is, what if your client doesn't have imagination? So again, Coactive is telling us that every person is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So I trust that they may not have imagination very developed, but there is some imagination there. So I'm going to play with whatever level of imagination they're coming with. And again, I'm not giving them, okay, let's pick a puppy and let's work from the puppy perspective. It's always about, let's pick something that might be random on your table, might be favorite holiday, might be your friend perspective, or maybe it's a book on your table, maybe it's something, it could be random. And the point is not in specific object or specific pet or animal or person. It's more exploring. They name it for some reason. So there is something there that resonates with them. So I had people picking Steve Jobs as a perspective. Great. Someone picked tango as a perspective. Fantastic. So I would never pick tango. I love it, but I don't know how to dance it. But one of my clients, she actually danced like one of the tango moves as we were exploring this. And it was so beautiful because usually as a coach, we're taught to try to repeat the movements with the client because it puts you on the same wavelengths. And that was one place where I struggled because I didn't know those moves. So I tried to repeat as much as possible, but obviously I was failing in a big way. But it was helpful to her because she knew what she feels like when she's dancing tango. She knew what that offers her. And so it's always their perspective, is their choice. Okay. And the second question was about, so what if they just go on and on and on and on and they never stop about how awesome the tango is and all the moves and all that? They give me all the history. So another good tip that I got going through training was that it's not about explanation, it's about exploration. So are they telling you that because they're exploring something, new way of thinking about something? They're exploring some qualities that they will be useful in shifting the perspective, or are they explaining something to you so that because they think that you need to understand? So if it's about explanation, then as a coach, you have a great tool. It's called intruding. So you actually have a permission, and that's what you design at the beginning with your client. You design that agreement that sometimes I will be intruding, I will be stopping you in the middle of the sentence in the service of our coaching work together in this session. So in the service of the goal that you're setting for yourself for this session, I may intrude and stop you because you're going into explanation. I don't need the details. So that, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it did. Thanks.
And it's a different kind of conversation. It's not, I know it may sound impolite, but again, you're there to serve them, and them explaining to you all the details of the situation are not helping them solve their problem. Okay, cool. Any other questions, comments before I move to the next?
Just a quick one here. How can you use this formula in a group situation?
So that's a great question, because this is, I've seen this applied more frequently with the individual coaching. If you're working with the team, then you could also ask them to explore perspectives together. I would probably, if I was facilitating with a team, I would first generate a list of perspectives that the team member would offer. And then I would maybe pick 5 or 3, depending on the time I have with the group. I would pick a small number of perspectives and explore them with the team. Again, remember the purpose of that exploration is always, so now that we understand how we feel in that perspective, in that situation, what if we take that situation's lens and look at the original topic that we're trying to work with? So now it becomes creativity of the group. And usually what happens is that it becomes what I call 2 + 2 = 5. So it becomes that generative space where each individual brings some ideas and perspectives. but as a group, they start bouncing ideas off each other. And so collectively, they actually generate even more ideas, more perspectives, more insights. But then, again, after you explore all these, this is that voting. So what's the resonant choice? What's the choice we're making to bring as the new perspective? Then how do we want to be as a group? What do we want to do as a group to support this resonant choice? Who is going to take actions? Do we have any volunteers? So this becomes a very standard facilitation with the group. Did that help clarify a little bit?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I was totally faking it, so I haven't done it with the team. I'm just thinking on the feed, like if I were to bring it, that's how I do it. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to move on to the next one. And the next tool may sound more familiar to people who have been trained in ORSC, because ORSC stands for Organization Relational System Coaching, right? So it's organizations, relationships, and systems. And it's coaching in all those three. So third entity, it's an interesting tool that's also using the idea of perspective. But now the perspectives are becoming more structured in the choice of those perspectives. If this balance, we are totally wide open, we can bring any perspective. Third entity is actually, seeing someone is their line. I don't know if someone's trying to draw something. So third entity is all about exploring the perspective of the group itself. Right? Because third entity is this imaginary space, imaginary construct that represents a group itself. So just like here in today's session, each of you showing up individually, but we all coming together as the Agile Austin group. So Agile Austin becomes our third entity. And that entity has certain needs. For example, as the third entity of the Agile Austin, we probably don't want any Zoom bombers in this space, right? We probably want to be playful, because this session today is about playfulness and coaching. So there are certain needs that we have as a group. We probably want to finish on time, right? So again, as individuals, we may have different needs and wishes, but as a group, we also have their own needs, wishes, and perspectives. And so this specific technique from ORSC is actually using that idea of third entity to do things like conflict resolution, for example. And so being able to bring that element of playfulness in the group concept is something that I'm going to be sharing in the next part of this. So think about, I'm not sure what this green line is. So do you know if this can be removed somehow? I don't know if that's...
I will work on that. Let me see if I can.
Okay. Yeah, because someone accidentally probably drew on the screen, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm just, I mean, I did not draw that line, but this, aroused the curiosity as to what is going on. So there is a pencil symbol on the left side.
Thank
somewhere. You need to disable that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And
I'll work on that. I wasn't able to clear it, but I'm not sure.
I still have a pencil on my mouse, so I can still draw it, but
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I can disable it while we're in the call, unfortunately. But if anything comes up, I'll clear it again. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Right. So third entity. What are we talking about here? So we're talking about, like, imagine that you are in a group, or maybe it's even you and another person. And that person could be your daughter, or they could be your husband, or your colleague, or whoever that other person might be. There is you, that person, and the relationship that exists between the two of you. And so with the concept of third entity, the coaching becomes all about exploring three different perspectives. So one is your own perspective, obviously it's the most righteous perspective, that's because it's yours, right? And then there's a perspective of your colleague, which, you know, in the conflict, obviously it's their own perspective, duh. And then there is a third perspective of your relationship. So what's happening between you and the needs that emerge there. So what's interesting with the third entity approach is that they say that everyone is right in this specific construct, but everyone is right only partially. And this coaching allows to explore different perspectives so that we can build alignment between these two individuals in support of that relationship that they have. So the assumption is, first of all, that, you know, everyone is right only partially, and the other one is that these two actually willing to improve their relationship. They're willing to work on that, and it could be a team. You can think about this as a conflict in the team and work in this third entity activity with the team. You can also work with individual, helping them explore the conflict that they're having with someone in the group. And so then I'm going to explain first how it is if we're working drama triangle yet. Maybe, I don't know, it might be inspired by that. In drama triangle, you also have different roles that you take in different relationships. Here, it's really about shifting perspective, just like we were shifting this balance. But these three perspectives are static. You have your own perspective of the person that you are in conflict with, and the perspective of your relationship. So while these perspectives are static, the way how you're going to navigate through them, to me, it has to be playful, because otherwise it's kind of hard to be very serious and then shift positions and think from the other person's perspective. So you have to bring a little bit of that playfulness mindset into this activity as well. Doesn't have to be too crazy, but ability of just thinking from the other person's shoes. And what helps in this is that as you're exploring different perspectives, you actually are moving your position physically in a space. And so how would you do it? So imagine that you start with coaches inviting you to describe how is it like to be in your situation. And what you're also instructed to do is to face imaginary person that you're in conflict. And so you're talking not to the coach, you're actually turning sideways and you're talking to that imaginary person. And sometimes you even put a chair there for that imaginary person to be in. And that imaginary person is the colleague that you have in conflict with. And so you're talking to that person, explaining how you feel, what you need from that person. And it's not like, oh, I need from him. No, it's like, I don't know, John, this is how I feel when you do X, Y, and Z. John, what I really need from you. So it's like you're using that name and you're referring directly to that person. So after you've done a little bit of that, then you're going to switch the chair. You're going to go and sit in, I picked John, I don't know why, but for the sake of this example, you're going to go and sit in John's chair. And now you're going to shift the perspective. You're going to now turn to that first place where you were sitting just a few minutes ago, and you're going to talk from the perspective of John in this situation. So what is that person feeling and needing and wanting, and what is that goes maybe unsaid, unexpressed in this relationship? So that's the conversation that's happening right now. And again, it's about John speaking directly to, like if he's speaking to me, then I, in the shoes of John, I would be saying like, Dana, when you do X, Y, and Z, it makes me feel hurt and what I really want from you. And so it's that kind of role playing, but you're role playing and you're moving your body in that physical space, and that helps with that shifting perspectives. That comes really, someone said about challenges with imagination. This is the stretching imagination when you go into that third place. So you're going into a place of your relationship. And the questions when you move into that third place, first of all, it's helpful if you are going to look at those two previous places and you kind of, stretch your hands and you're almost like touching the two people who were there, Dana and Joan. So they're there, and now I'm in relationship between them. And so the questions that you're exploring now is like, so relationship, and if someone is coaching me, they'll be asking me questions like that. So relationship, what do you see when you're looking at those two? What is it you know that they've forgotten about? What ideas do you have for them? What would you want them to do in this situation? How do you feel relationship when they're acting the way they do? So it's that, again, stretching your imagination big time, but it does give a lot of new insights, because now you're speaking from the perspective of relationship. And maybe as a relationship, I feel neglected, right? Because if they don't talk to each other, there's a conflict. I feel threatened maybe because I'm about to disappear, right? And again, that's, I mean, there is no physical object that's called relationship, but I'm trying to imagine if there was this imaginary third entity that's actually keeping these two together, how would it feel when there's a conflict going on? And so the last thing in this third entity activity is that you're actually now, after exploring these three perspectives, you're going to go back into your original one. Just like we did this balance, we went through all of them and then we went back. Very similarly here, now you're asking, now after you heard all these different perspectives, what's new for you? What's coming up? What are you willing to do differently? Maybe how you're willing to be different in this relationship. And again, narrowing down to commitment, right? So what's one thing that you can do differently? Are you willing to do it? Yes. When are you willing? By when are you willing to do it? How committed are you on a scale from 0 to 10? So all these coaching tricks that we bring to help person to truly commit to doing something in specific time frame and having accountability around that. Any thoughts, feedback? I know quite a few people on this call tried the third entity before. Anything you're willing to share with others about third entity? Okay. So I explained how to do this when you are coaching individual. So how do you do it as a team? There's a slightly different way to do it, but the idea is the same. You still have this idea that there is perspective of individuals and then the perspective of relationship, perspective of the team itself. And so what I've seen people do is putting the empty chair to represent that relationship. And so then as we start asking from each individual member of the team, so how do you feel in this situation? What do you want from this situation? We do something that's called ventilating the system. So we are acknowledging their feelings that they're bringing into this. We're acknowledging their needs. We're giving them an opportunity to share those. We're validating their needs and feelings, because remember, everyone is right, only partially. So they're all right in their own way. But now as a system, as the third entity, we're still having some challenges. And then that empty chair becomes an invitation for anyone from the group to step into that role of third entity. So again, to me, it's very playful, right? Because you have to imagine that you are representing the third entity when you're sitting in that chair and you're speaking on behalf of the needs of the entire group. Okay. Thoughts, ideas? Someone posted something here.
So Sherry's taking notes for us in the chat. And I would invite, if people don't want to come off mute and share your experience, you can also share in chat. I found it very helpful to at least introduce the idea of the third entity with groups and with people It also helps with the forming of the team relationship, right? So the team itself is an entity. What will you name it? Let's make it our mascot. And then we serve the team. I don't know. There's just a way to like kind of shift and have that be a thing that matters as much as any individual. So very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up the idea of how will we name it? What's the mascot? So it's that playful elements that make our work more fun. We connect better as people. We are no longer just, I don't know, senior developer one and I don't know, whatever else the titles are in your organization, but we become real. We become, people that we can trust, we can connect with, because it's hard to trust someone that you don't know, right? And playfulness is opening up the door for building trust. Yes, Navas. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like the biases that may come into play. Like, so I'm thinking of okay, these are extreme cases, but I have seen people in like introverts and extroverts. So, like, what are the guidelines? Like, when you like the same problem, if is presented to an extrovert, and then you having that conversation, and the second person being an introvert, you would have a very different outcome than vice versa for the same problem, right?
Potentially, I don't know. Can you tell me more?
No, what I'm trying to say is that you cannot see so much into an introvert. So if the same problem is presented between two people, one being an extrovert and the other person being an introvert, and then if you having a coaching conversation with an extrovert, you would have a different outcome than you would have the same conversation with an introvert around the same problem. So I'm just trying to understand, like, how would you look at some of the biases that may come into play based on the personal traits, individual characteristics that the people are going to use this tool?
Yeah, so think about this way, all these tools that are there to support individual transformation, right? So it's all about empowering the person to look at things differently, to do something that they may not have enough courage to do otherwise, to stretch their comfort zone a little bit. It's not about pushing them into fear or panic zone. It's about helping them see that, hey, they're actually capable of doing something that they may not have seen as an option before. It's about trusting that they're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Whether they're introverts or extroverts, they have enough resources and they're creative, and you're working with the whole person. The way how they engage with you as a coach might be different. It may take longer to develop trust in relationship with the introvert, but you still, maybe you won't go into as many long conversation, or I'm actually going to use a better example. With introvert, you're probably not going to intrude as much because they're most likely going to be very succinct with this is what they're saying. And with extrovert, you may have to bring more of the power tools to stop them mid-sentence if they're going into too many rabbit holes. But it's just the nature of different people, and you bringing your intuition, bringing your situational awareness into a coaching relationship. Hi, Susmita, welcome. And I see your hand raised, so jump on in.
Actually, I was going to chime in for the question that was asked. So coming from a true introvert, I think psychological safety is the key there. Because as I said, coming from personal experience, the only time I tend to not talk is one, if I don't have anything to add, or second, if I do not feel comfortable about what I'm being said is going to be safe or taken in the right perspective and open-mindedness.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Susmita. And it's interesting because I would never think about you as introvert. But see, that's the thing. It's like introvertness is in the eyes of the beholder, right? It's like how we see ourselves and how we show up to people might be very different. It's that
Yes.
Remember, I asked the question at the beginning, what version of you is showing up? And sometimes, just like Susmita, sometimes I'm an introvert. I don't want to be seen, or I don't want to interact with anybody. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. But, other times I love sharing with people what I know and be in the session and training. So I love that energy. So sometimes it's like really, I don't know, I guess it's situational, but being flexible with the different tools and being aware of the different personality that people are bringing. And just like Susmita said, building that trusting connection with their psychological safety is present is what's going to make it possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I too claim to be introvert. And people wouldn't see that because it doesn't necessarily mean I can't speak or don't have social skills or even social desire. It's more that where I get my energy is not from other people, it's from quiet time. So I think that's where that starts to come into. But you're right, thinking about how we express those things in exchange, in our daily exchange, that could come through. One of the topics we'd love to bring is Agile coaching by introverts for introverts. Maybe someday we'll do that topic, because I think that would be very interesting.
They should pair up on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. So I think, and I might be totally confused with the time frame, with the time zones, but I think I am getting closer to the end, right? So
Yes, we're close to wrapping up.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to share one last tool, and I'm not going to go into doing it, but I'm going to send a link to a board and mural where you can try to do it with your teams. And the reason why I want to bring this last one, because it's one of my favorite ones. And this is actually very well built for working with the teams. So this third tool is called TRIZ, and this is coming from Liberating Structures. And the perspective that we're asking the team to bring with this tool is this evil hat perspective. And that's why you see this, bitches flying, and there is this bitch hat, because it's all about making things worse before we can make it better. And it's that evilness perspective that, for example, you want to make the team dynamic better in your group. Maybe last spring there was some kind of conflict. So instead of trying to have retrospective on how can we all work better together, instead of that, just invite your teams to put on the evil hats and how can we create a space where we're going to be absolutely miserable? Let's just imagine all the evil things we can do to each other so that this becomes this absolutely horrible place to work and everyone is going to be crying every day. So just make it very dramatic, make it a place for them to imagine absolute doomsday scenario for the team. And what this trick does is that it makes it very abstract. People start coming up with all sorts of ideas, all sorts of crazy ways to break things. But then the second part of this, that's where you start. You start with the first step, just imagine how can we reliably design a perfect way to fail, right? And so once they come up with all these different ideas, you letting them explore it, you're letting them have fun, because they're actually going to really enjoy it. They'll start with generating individual ideas, but then as they start building on each other's ideas, you'll hear lots of laughter, lots of playful exploration of evil, horrible ways to break things apart. And so that's where the second step will come in, because second step is going to be you inviting them to look back at that same list and find any of the things that are already happening in the team. So anything that's exactly like on the list, anything that resembles things on the list, what are the things that we are already doing? And this is a huge aha moment for the group, because they were just abstractly playing, imagining bad things that they can do. But hey, we actually look at that list, we're actually doing this number 2 and this number 5, and then so many other things. And it becomes easier for them to acknowledge that, yes, there is a conflict in the group. Yes, we're already doing these things, because by now they played with it, they put it out there, it's on the board or on the flip chart, it's no longer something that's connected with them personally. It's more like it's out there, now we can just, you know, check and put dots or do whatever. It's become something that's disassociated from that. And then the last step here is, which ones would you be willing to stop doing? So this activity is not about coming up with something new. It's about stopping things that are dysfunctional. Okay. And what I'm going to do is share this board with you. So if you're interested, you can always see how it's done in Mural. There are same steps as I described, and so you can play it with your teams and see how it can make a difference. Okay. And
these types of activities where you're thinking backwards, and because people are always trying to think, what are the best ways we can succeed and things like that, but to work backwards from a point of fail or not succeed, I think is another way to shift perspective. It's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different perspective, right? It's not the perspective of fixing something, it's perspective of breaking something. It's like, let's channel the bad version of us and let's just make sure it breaks things apart. And that's what enables innovation and enables open conversation, because, hey, we just were laughing together. So now it's safer to say, yeah, actually we did that. Okay. And I'm going to wrap up with virtual ball tools. No, we don't have time for that, but I'll have to do it some other time. So with virtual ball tools, if we had time, we would play, but we'll do it at some other time. But what I want to give you as a parting gift. So this is a link to a sample set of the cards that going to help you explore fear in the workplace. That's a game that I created, which is useful in helping team disassociate from the problem that they're having by playing different scenarios and looking at the different monsters that are connected with the different symptoms of fear, different dysfunctions in organizations. And so it's a great way to drive conversation about dysfunctions in the team, in the organization, and what to do about that.
Dana,
I just want to say thank you very much.
Yeah.
And pass it back to Sid.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do you mind if I share a link to your materials or some of these in our meetup chat for the people who signed up? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Go ahead for that.
Fantastic. So we'll make sure, try to catch them here, but if not, we'll also share them there. We will also, I'm going to take over sharing. We'll also share the recording of this session on YouTube in the next day or two and share that. And I want to thank everybody and just give you a quick prelude to next month. We're going to have a group of Agile coaches join us that are going to be talking about also getting unstuck, but in a different way. So for teams who have hit obstacles or impediments, how to help them shift from just owning that into being accountable for moving that and to shift out of pointing the finger, who owns what, who does what. So they're going to come tell us their story. We will learn from their experience and have a lovely discussion around helping teams move beyond those blockers. And as always, we are so grateful that you're here. And so we want to thank you all for coming and for being part of this really active community. We have such great engagement from you all, and it's just really wonderful to learn together. So thank you for joining us. And Dana, thank you for all that you've shared with us tonight. I feel enriched and I feel playful. I want to go try some of these things out right away. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay playful.